Oh, I've just been told we've got a mic issue. So let's go again. Okay. Can we hear me okay now? Perfect. So start again. Thanks for joining us. It is our second live of this year. Super excited to bring in Mike. But before we start, let's try again. I know we had a comps issue that's sorted. Can people give me a thumbs up, a comment, so I know you can hear me okay, you can see me okay? Depending on where you're watching, this is coming through StreamYard. So I may not be able to see your name if you don't get StreamYard permission. Not a problem. You don't need to give your name. We'll be able to see your comment, just won't be able to see who you are. And before we get going, I need to give a massive thank you and shout out to Apex here in Dallas for letting me use their offices to make today's live happen. So if you guys don't know who Apex are, I suggest you check them out. So without further ado, let's get going and let me bring in today's guest, Michael.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good, good. So for the audience, do you want to share who you are, what you do with our audience?
For sure. Okay, well, I've been in the staffing industry for about 30 years, believe it or not. And after about 3 years ago, I decided to pivot out of the staffing world, not completely. I was, just so you know, I was in light industrial, skilled trades, and IT staffing. And we still do that a bit now. But 3 years ago, we pivoted our business to look after back office for staffing firms and act as an employer of record for companies. So staffing firms, and that would be payroll, invoicing, collections, generating contracts, and payroll funding. So we pivoted to that industry about 3 years ago. And just before the pandemic in 2019 in June. And we just found that there was a number of large competitors in that space that were starting to consolidate. They were starting to, some of them were changing, a lot happening in that field. So we just felt there was a bit of a vacuum for small independent staffing firms and recruiters to have a back office, to have support on the payroll and funding side, without just looking for the big staffing firms. So we wanted to help the smaller ones and the startups to know where the landmines were, what to avoid, and so on. And I personally love I love being an independent business owner. I love hearing people say they want to start a business. I just hear that ring in their voice, and when they're saying they want to start a business. And I just love to hear that, because I think back to myself when I wanted to start a business, and I just hear that, and I just get that joy of helping people succeed, or at least attempt their dream. Right? We
Yeah.
don't always succeed. We all have trouble, but that's basically in a nutshell what we're about.
Yeah, thank you for that. Because one of the things I see in my coaching practice, as well as Elite Global Recruiters, is you've got individuals who want to start their own business. They're in the industry, they want to start their own business, but they have a million questions. And one of the biggest ones I hear is, but how do I payroll how do I payroll temps, contractors? And then on the other side, um, I work with a lot of executive business owners who have a really phenomenal perm revenue stream, who would either like to, or they have clients saying, hey, you can have our contracting business. But it's that, again, it's that stuff that keeps everybody awake at night, right? Because when you're doing contracting and temps, there is so much more liability that you
Right.
have to think about. And that's where you guys come in. So that's why I was like, okay, we need to do a live on this. I really appreciate you sharing
Thank you.
your wealth of expertise with us today. So let's, I just got a couple of questions for you before I dive in deeper. Are you just dealing with the Canadian market, or do you do international as well? Because we have an international audience here.
Right, right. And this space that we're talking about has become very global very quickly over the pandemic, primarily. Um, some companies that are doing the employer of record all over the world. Our focus is on Canada, and we feel that there is a vacuum, that there is an opportunity just for Canada. Although we do partner with employer of record, a back office service in the United States that we work back and forth with, but primarily our focus is Canada. Yeah.
Okay, so just for clarification purposes, I'm a company sitting in the US, like I'm sitting in Dallas today,
Right.
right? So if this was my home base, I had clients that I needed to service in Canada, you would still work with me. You'd be able to help me.
Absolutely. Right now, we bill, whether it be if there's a Canadian arm of that service, of that company, we would bill them in Canada. If they didn't have a Canadian office, but they had, employees that they wanted to employ in Canada, then we would still bill their US office and pay the Canadian employee.
Got it. Actually, you just bring me on to one of my first questions, because when you think of having a need for a service such as yours, we often start thinking, okay, well, we have contractors or temp, we need to payroll them, and we need to manage the cash, right? So the financial side of it. But actually, you guys do a lot more than that. You manage the the company's permanent employees as well. So you're actually providing a service which is good further, far beyond just making the contractor payroll.
Yes, that's what we do as well. Yes, it's called. We've recently, right when we started, we had a company in the United States that opened in Canada, and they had a large contract immediately. So we became their employer of record for all their employees right from the beginning, so that we could provide them not only payroll and payroll funding and employer of record service, but HR and health and safety. And that those elements, right from the get-go, they have an entire payroll department, an entire health and safety, an entire HR department, and that way they were on the ground running with their business with all those other things in place that basically only charged them according to the revenue that they had. So it was a great start for them.
Yeah, because I hadn't even thought of health and safety.
Yeah,
Hadn't even, like, I'll
it's a
be
big one.
honest with you.
Yeah,
Yeah, I hadn't even thought of that part of it.
yeah.
Um, Putting you on the spot here, but do you think a lot of people use a provider such as yourself because of, more so because of the payroll funding part of it, or because of the health and safety, and having a partner who is the expert in it, which allows them to continue growing their business, right? Because unfortunately, life happens and accidents do happen.
Yes. Now, I wouldn't try to judge their motivations on why they do it, but I think it's basically that's one element. I mean, it doesn't eliminate the risk, particularly Ontario. People don't know that. Even our clients that started in Ontario, for example, had a near serious injury. Thank God the employee is fine and it wasn't hurt, but it was a potential serious situation. But our health and safety person was right on the scene, and I was in the area right away. And those are elements that they wouldn't have in place at that first year of opening necessarily. They may have dabbled in it a little bit, but we had everything in place so that because it has to do with the trains and so on, there was Ministry of Labor, there's OPP, there's CP Rail, I don't know if I can say that, but they they all of those elements were there, and we had to have everything in place, and everything was right, the way it had to be. So yes, I think those things are important to have in place, because it's good business to keep safety of your employees. It's good business to the health and the HR and the mental health of your employees. All those things together. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm assuming an accident's taken place. Um, me as the recruiter, as the owner, who at the point of contact gets the call, and I'm immediately able to reach out to your team
Yeah.
and say help.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I continue obviously getting on site and things like that, but it certainly ensures that the individuals are able to get the best help,
Yeah.
me as a business. And so, okay, so let me ask you this question then. So we have the health and safety part of it as well, which is like, how do you put a price on that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But one of the other things, especially here in Ontario, the laws, you know, that every day you wake up and there seems to be something new the government's trying to implement, some new legislation, and I get it. It's there. We have to protect workers, right? We
Yeah.
and I'm all for that.
Yeah.
But certainly it keeps changing. So trying to stay on top of Ontario law is a full-time job by itself.
It is. Yeah, and particularly our clients that are in light industrial, they often don't know the rules, say around a stat holiday, or around vacation pay, or around just different rules that just came up even during the pandemic, that if they're off sick for a vaccine or so on, how do you pay them, and how does that work? And all those different rules that just came, like there was something like, we deal with the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. We also deal with the Canadian Payroll Association, and there was hundreds of legislation elements over the pandemic that were changing just in Canada. And thank God we have organizations that we connect with too, and we remain in good standing with those organizations on how we deal with things, because you have to do it right if you're gonna win as a recruiter in the staffing world. I think, like you say, you want to go to sleep at night knowing that you did everything right, and people are safe and healthy.
100%, because as a business owner, you have sleepless nights to start off with anyhow, right? Now let's be honest, right? Do we
Yeah.
do the right thing? All of those questions, right? And the last thing you want is to be worrying about stuff that, and I want to be careful how I say this, because I'm not implying that you have no responsibility as a business owner, but certainly knowing if there is a challenge, there is a partner you can go to who's an expert in that can help navigate.
Yeah, and there is a lot of shared responsibility, particularly in Ontario. People don't know how the rules, they're somewhat gray, but they always nuance back and forth between the company that's the employer of record and the location where the person is working. And if there's some neglect on the side of the staffing firm or the recruiter or the employer of record, that will come up. If there's some neglect on the side of where the placement is, for example, an abusive supervisor or an unsafe uh, portion of equipment or something, those things will go to the where the blame needs to go to, and no one's free. I mean, the risk is reduced with a company like ourselves and others, but that's not shouldn't be the primary reason necessarily. You should be doing everything properly anyways, but it's a good motivator to keep those siloed responsibilities in top of mind as well.
The way I look at it, I totally agree with you. As a business owner, buck stops with you, right? You're the account, that's where the accountability goes. Um, but you also aren't, like, certainly in my case, I'm not an expert in that. So it makes complete sense to partner with somebody that is an expert in all of that, because you then, for lack of a better word, it frees you up to do what you do best, which is grow the business,
Right.
the client piece of it. But one thing I do want to, before I move on from legislation and things like that, one of the things, unfortunately, you hear, and it happens in every single industry has its cowboys, and unfortunately, as do we. Okay. So some of the things I've been hearing recently is candidates when they're registering, not guaranteed work, but just registering, being charged for or covering the cost of their criminal credit checks.
Hmm.
Now, I, as a business owner, don't think that's right.
No.
Okay, that's just cost of business,
Yep.
right? It's just cost of business.
Yep.
Now, I get it. There is a cost, and that process does have to take place, and when the candidate's going to work and things like that. So I'm not saying we shouldn't be doing that. But this is where somebody can come to you and say, "Hey, I'm thinking of charging everybody that registers. I'm thinking of charging them, I don't know, $5 or whatever the case may be, to cover the criminal credit checks." You're able to say to them, "Hang on a second,
Yeah.
stop, don't do that."
Yeah, exactly. And this happens quite a lot, and not maliciously necessarily. It's recruiters are trying to solve problems, and, well, what if I do this, or what if I do that? And we say, yeah, or you could do this, but you can't do that. Or if you do, you know, this is what we recommend in terms of legalities, in terms of signing off, and so on. And yeah, so all those things are true, and you have to navigate, and those rules are changing, like you said, constantly. So
Yeah. And it's one of those ones, just because you can do something doesn't necessarily mean you should do it,
no.
right? So, and you're right, the legislation is just changing so fast, that what you were doing yesterday may have been the right thing to do, but something's changed and you've got to pivot. And again, that's where you guys come in to help really say, okay, this is our professional recommendation. Now you do X. Okay, great. So what about I want to talk about the pandemic. Now, I'm one of those people that thinks we're coming out the other end. And what I mean by that is we're beginning to learn to live with it. We're beginning to learn how to run our businesses. Are we there? Is it perfect? Absolutely not. That's not what I'm saying. Um, so, but there would have been those individuals that had just started their business before the pandemic, and then suddenly, oh my God, the pandemic hit. What are some of the things you saw your clients do? How did they pivot? Did people even start their agencies during the pandemic?
um, Many started, yeah. And for example, healthcare, um, I seen some independent perm recruiters start in healthcare on the contract side. Very good time to do that. But yeah, there's just there was a number of things. For example, we partnered with a company in Michigan called Wedge, Competitive Wedge, and it's a one-way interview process. And we started that, and we gave that to some of our recruiters. Some didn't want it, didn't like it, prefer to use a Zoom or something, and others thought it was really good. So in other words, you have 3 or 4 questions or 5 questions and about the job, and you send it after you've screened the candidate. Of course, you send them this link. They do a little video and answer a few pointed questions, and then you send that video with the resume to the client. The clients were just ecstatic because they were happy. They were worried, what do we do about interviewing and having them come out to our site and so on. And the candidates really, really loved it because there was things, there was the safety issue, but you're putting your kids to bed, and then you do an interview or answer a few interview questions, and they were really enjoying that, and they didn't have to drive anywhere and so on. And so that was just one aspect, and that company, I connected with the CEO there, and they started, and they've been doing very well. And so, I mean, some people don't like the video aspect. You mentioned yourself to me, I think at one point, that you love the connection with people. I do too. It's very important, but timing and safety, and speed with video gets the candidate to the client faster as well. So that was one thing that we noticed helped.
Well, actually, one of the things that I just thought of as you were talking, we've talked about the service that you're able to offer your members and your clients. But if I've understood you correctly, you actually are looking for other, be it technologies, be it services, that will benefit your clients, and you're actually bringing them to your clients as well.
Right.
So I don't know whether they're looking for a new ATS system or anything like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So that's another benefit of partnering with somebody like yourself. We're able to, I assume, and I don't want to put you on the spot here, but I assume you're able to get a better price because the buying power that you're getting than I would as an individual, for example.
And not only that, I want to mention that we've because we're in the somewhat technical at Wages here, we've developed, for example, our own WITMIS and WIMIS, workplace violence and harassment, AODA, all of these interactive tests and training. With the help of our HR partner, we've developed the interactive training, and that's part of the service. So they get, when they interact, when our clients enter a new employee into the system, they can send out a link immediately for WIMIS, light industrial, or any other testing, by the way, that we create for them, and they can have the results of that testing come back into their system and so on. And then also on the onboarding side, things like click to sign, contracts, click to sign, banking information, all that stuff that is important and has to be done right and fast and easy for the candidate. Otherwise, they lose them. And so those things that we'll do as well, build our own, because we built our own, but also find technologies like my friend Matt in Michigan with video.
That's interesting. No, that's great. So I want to go back to some of the tests you're able to offer. Now, I will say I've not done light industrial recruitment here in Canada. Okay, but I've done 8 years in light industrial recruitment
Oh, okay.
in a previous life, so I totally get the market. So what you're able to offer is all the different tests
Yeah.
that the client may require. I just want to make sure I'm clear on
Yeah.
this. You're able to offer all the tests that the client may require, or a version of the tests a client may require.
Right. For
And
example, like in Ontario, there's what they call the workplace. I always forget it. Workplace violence and harassment, but there's the MOL, they call it, Ministry of Labor, health and safety awareness training. There's awareness training for supervisors, and there's awareness training for workers. We have one for each, and it's the exact training that the Ministry of Labor on their Ministry of Labor site does, but ours is interactive. It provides a certificate at the end, and so that they have done the training. We also do the WIMIS 2015, as you're probably aware. That has health and safety for industrial sites, and that doesn't have to be for IT or office people, but that's available. But then also we have AODA, with customer service and human rights. AODA, those are really, really good for retail recruiting. Right now, retailers, we encourage retailers to small retailers to use a service like ours, employer of record service, and then do the testing for their employees as well, or recruiters that are recruiting for retail. You get the AODA, you get the recruitment, all the training ahead of time, and then they can make a placement, and we can do the payroll. So, yeah, there's a lot on that on the training side that we can do, and we can do. We've done it customized with a number of food companies as well, Suki. Like
Okay.
some food companies have their own training, GMP training, and we've converted that to an interactive training and then certification for the employees, so that it's a little more easier for the candidates to complete at home, for example, or instead of a room with 20 or 30 people.
So let me just make sure I've understood that last part correctly, because I think that is a great service that you're able to offer. So I, as a recruiter, am signing client A. Client A says all our flexible workforce must have gone through our training.
Right.
I can come to you and say, okay, and plug and play. And
Yep.
I'm not saying you,
Absolutely.
right? So
Yep.
literally plug and play in that
Yep.
case. And you're
Yep.
able to say, okay, let us work our magic. And so everybody is able to take the tests and then they go back. And that's a great value add to be
Yeah.
able to
And
do that.
it may I love this sort of thing, so it may take me Saturday afternoon, and I do it. And I liken it to knitting. If my grandmother's a knitter and I say knit me something, she wants to knit it, right? So that's what I like to do on the weekend.
No, I mean, you don't think about how much it actually, all the work that's involved
There
with
is. Yeah.
temporary labor,
Oh, that is for sure.
right? All the work that's involved with temporary labor. Now, I just want to flick back because, again, I've just had another thought. So during the pandemic, okay, and I guess it's more applicable with the temporary labor space. You had, we're open, we're in lockdown, we're open. So, and and none of us knew whether we were coming or going.
Yeah.
Now, politicalness to one side, that had to have been I certainly, from my coaching practice, I know the challenges temporary agencies had, because they were having to pivot so fast. And when they went into lockdown, be it a week, be it 2 weeks, whatever the case may be, they lost their workforce. And then
Yeah.
a client demand comes back up,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So talk about some of the things you saw there with your clients, and some of how they're able to pivot and how you're able to help them manage that.
Right. Well, in some cases we would, in some cases it went crazy because the food industry, for example, in 2000 or 2020, at the beginning of the year, it went absolutely massive in some of the food industry. And then other companies, shut down. But the good part about that was, that we can say to an employee, sorry, a staffing firm, you know what, there's a couple other clients that need candidates. Should we talk to each other, or should we connect you two about with your candidate and share, filling orders and so on together? We don't talk about other staffing firms to one staffing firm. We don't even advertise who our clients are, because we think that is really, really an important element that may have.
Confidentiality.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
But we will talk to them and say, if I have a client that needs your type of candidate right now, would you like me to connect and you guys just work it out? And that's happened so many times. And so we really encourage that. And within a network like yourself, when you build networks, those things are so important. And you might not make money, right away on every transaction. You can't think that way. You can't. It
No.
comes back. It always comes back somehow. So
You're so right, because since January, I've had companies approach me saying, we're looking for X. Can you help us find it? And it's not my area of expertise. I always go to the elite, well, you've seen it. I go to the Elite Global Recruiters group and I say, who specializes in X?
Right.
I'm going to make a connection. And we were actually, before I left, we were counting, that was $100,000 worth of business. That was $100,000 worth of business. And one of the individuals we connected messaged me Friday or whatever day it was to say, actually, it was a retained search. And that's the power of belonging to a community, because what you've done, yes, it's business and there's business transactions and so forth, but you're fostering, you're nurturing community there.
I believe so. And you learn so much. I mean, I learned from my customers every day. Hey, we decided to do this. I'm like, wow, I've never heard of that. That's an excellent idea. Or you could do that. Or have, I can't get I have a client that we can't get enough people for. Do you have any ideas? And I might say, for example, recently we've said, well, why don't you charge a set fee per hour and do a permanent placement, but not 20%. We're talking light industrial here, so they won't pay $20,000 for a forklift driver. But so different ideas on how to place people, or different ideas on how to manage your businesses, because there's so many ideas coming back and forth between people, and so many ways to solve problems, and that's, I guess, where it comes down to.
But also, again, like I see in the coaching and in the group, sometimes, especially as a business owner, you think you're the only one that's got that problem,
Hmm.
right? It's just
Yep.
like, why is this happening to me? And then you think, oh God. And then again, you've got that community where you're able to have that conversation and realize, no, it's not just me.
Right.
Okay. And that,
Right.
so let me ask you this. You slightly touched on it. One of the things I hear a lot is, I'm a recruiter, perms for argument's sake. And I don't like the business development part of it, but now I don't want to go down the whole rabbit hole of, well, why are you self-employed and things like that, but don't like the BD part of it. I say we're all salespeople, whether we're on the candidate side or the client side, but that aside, and they want to partner with somebody who has the sales skills, right? So almost that order sharing and things like that.
Hmm.
Is that something you see a lot happening a lot in your business with your clients on the perm side?
um on the perm side, most definitely. They you know there's so many. I would have to say, over the years, as an overview, there's been kind of the sharing of the most difficult orders that nobody could fill anyways. And
Yep.
then over time, it kind of, a sharing of orders, because I trust that other recruiter, and maybe, and that doesn't mean they're going to trust all of them, and so there's a trust factor in our industry, which is terrible. No, I think we have to get over that as a certain extent. And the other element on top of that is then, that people now are starting to, and what I'm seeing, and amongst my some of my network, is sharing orders right from the get-go. Okay, I have 10 IT orders in Toronto, and maybe they can work from anywhere in the world. So should I get that really, really good IT recruiter in Texas to work on it too? The one I trust, and so on. And then, so yes, that, because those are, I think that's something that, that helps build that network together. And that it doesn't really matter. North America and Europe, I see people share orders, at the beginning stage, not after we can't fill it anymore.
Yeah, because in the past it's like, oh my God, this is a really tough order, so I'm going to give that. But this is an order this is an easy order. I'm going to
Right.
keep that. See, on one sense, it makes sense because
Yep.
you okay. I don't need help,
Right.
but on the other token, If you're only ever asking for help on the really, really difficult orders, people aren't going to jump on them,
No.
right? So
Yeah.
it's that fine line, right? So what about companies that are members and they decide, I don't know, again, I'll stick with Ontario, they're Ontario members, and suddenly they've got a massive deal, I don't know, in BC,
Yeah.
right? How do you help them with that?
Well, we employ people pretty much across the country. We do in BC and Ontario, Quebec, down east, and in Alberta. And we, so when that happens, we're already first off ready. So our contracts for the employees, for example, the onboarding, it's very similar to in most provinces with some tweaking. So our contract will have the tweaking within each accounting for each province. And then when they onboard a candidate, if we know it's BC, for example, and it's this particular job, then we know that the health tax is going to be this, the workers comp is going to be this, and we have all those legislative changes for BC, for example, 8 hours and then it's overtime, and as opposed to Ontario. So all those things are different, and you have to know those things, and it's really hard to keep up because they're changing again all the time. But my staff, I can't take credit for this. My staff is amazing, and they keep up on that.
You're right, because coming from England, we have the VAT, right? It's one figure. Doesn't matter where you are.
Mm,
It's the and what I find really strange here, and actually in the US as well now, right? No, it's what is it, 13%?
yeah.
HST is Ontario,
Yeah.
5 or 6%. And it's just like trying to just keep on top of
Oh,
that. Okay. And it's just it's an invoicing nightmare
it is.
if you don't have somebody whose area of expertise that is. Now, how much do you do in Quebec? Because Quebec, just completely different laws altogether.
Yeah, just a little bit. In
Uh-huh.
fact, I've personally had difficulty in Quebec because of the language,
Okay.
and I've hired a consultant to deal with Quebec for us. And then there's somebody we're considering, completely outsourcing Quebec because of the language. We just simply the government's just getting a little more difficult to deal with. In the language, and I'm sorry to say, I'd love to work, but it now maybe that's just me. It just seems that that's the case, and but we'll deal with any problems we can, but we found that that is because of the language barrier primarily. That's the difficulty. So we're considering outsourcing. We don't do a lot of business right now. It's a thorn in my side, Suki. I'm not sure what to do there. But I
I
think
think
I
you
think right
nailed
back
it.
to Confederation, that's been a problem.
No, but I think you nailed it. Outsource. Let this not your area of expertise. It is someone else's area of expertise, and that's where the partnership piece comes in,
Right.
right? So to me, that completely makes sense because Quebec is, for me, Quebec is a challenging region
Yep.
because again, I don't speak the language. Okay,
Yeah.
but I do help clients in Quebec and things like that. But I'm not in that contracting space. I'm not in that temporary stage. So for lack of a better word, it's easier for my business. But certainly, if I was going to do contracting there, I would absolutely want a partner
Yeah.
that understands that the Quebec market. It just makes complete sense,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because again, it's risk,
It is. Yeah.
and I'll pay for that expertise, no problem,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And unfortunately, having said that, let's call a spade a spade. There's a lot of people, again, we're talking about our industry, and it happens in every industry. They don't want to pay for that, and they keep doing stuff knowing that it is wrong, and then they have this massive legal issue down. 2 years down the road, a year down the road, whatever the case may be, something
Right.
triggers it, right?
Right.
So, now maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but
No.
why not have an expert to make sure you're setting up legit? And as the law changes, you're changing your business practices because, as I said earlier, there's so many things that keeps um, business owners awake at night. I certainly wouldn't want this to be one of them.
Right. And that's one of the really big points about what we do like, for example, we do both corp to corp, uh, agent of record, and employer of record. So with employer of record, we have to pay the people immediately, but we pay the government immediately too, because that's where people get into problems. They may end up having the money to make a payroll, but when the government's really not asking for the taxes right away when you make a payroll, they're asking for it in 30 days and so on. And if you what happens is there's just so much money involved with payroll, and I can tell you, I've seen some really good people get into really difficult situations at no fault of their own because they had this big pile of money, and so they bought cars and offices, and you know what, but at some point it stops, and you have to pay those taxes. And so we like what our partners on the payroll side, our payroll is, every time we run a payroll, all the taxes are gone. As soon as we do all those things, those are the areas that are difficult, that you have to watch with a complete instance of importance, I guess I could
Well,
say.
no, never invite the government into your business. Don't do stuff. No, that's my that's the way I look at it. I don't care. I like staffing is a grey area business because we're dealing with people, right?
Right.
But things like taxes, there's no grey area. Things like having insurance, there's no grey area.
Right.
I hate paying insurance.
Yep.
Absolutely hate paying it.
Yep.
Car insurance, we all hate paying it
Yep.
until we have an accident.
Sure.
Then we're grateful, right? So no, I totally agree with you on that one because people do sometimes get into trouble because they don't know what they don't know. So they
Hmm.
don't know what they should be charging, what the taxes and things like that.
Yep.
But let's be honest, there are those that are intentionally doing it and buying that extra house, buying this, buying a car,
Sure.
knowing full well that they owe that money, right?
Right.
And that's a business that at some day is just going to crash and burn because the government is going to catch up with you.
For
But I
sure.
do want to bring something up here. So vacation pay,
Yes.
right? Temporary workers vacation pay. Now, again, it's not my area of expertise. Is this something that when you're running the payroll, are you paying that out, encouraging everybody to pay it out weekly, or
Yeah, we
how do you handle that?
in Ontario, you have to ask them to sign off on that, and we do naturally. And some provinces are different, but in terms of the amount, I think like Saskatchewan, for example. But we find it depends on the client. We have clients that are employer of record, and they ask us to make sure we accrue the vacation pay, and then when they go on holidays, they want to take that money out. No problem, we'll do that. But most of our staffing clients, when they place a worker, we encourage them to give the worker every bit of money that is entitled to them. Even if it's a 1 year assignment and you know that they're going to be there for a year or longer, give them their vacation pay. And if they're going to take time off, they can put that money aside and do, because first, it's just the right thing to do. And it's it's my opinion. And I think it's, direct deposit, vacation pay out, that's the most ideal. We have some managers and high end positions that we don't do that for, but those are the exception to the rule.
Yeah, I mean, again, going back to my light industrial days, they've done the work. I'm showing my age here, but they used to get paid weekly, right? It was a
Yeah,
weekly payroll.
yeah, yeah,
And if you missed that, if that timesheet wasn't in on time and the wages didn't get it created
yeah.
so many problems. But I do agree with you because it's their money. Give it to them. Let them do what they want to do
Hmm.
rather than you hold on to it.
Yeah,
Because I dare say, and again, we're going to go down another rabbit hole that is beyond the scope of today, but some temporary workers aren't even aware that they have the vacation pay,
yeah.
right? So I think we'd be
I have vacation pay piled somewhere in an agency in Toronto for a couple jobs that I did
yeah,
when I
yeah,
was in my early 20s.
but that's it, right? Because and then they they forget and then they remember, or they didn't realize they were entitled to it, and then it comes to, another agency has paid it, and they're like, "What's this?" Then say,
Yeah,
"Well, this is your money,
yeah,
right?" Especially new immigrant workers and things like that. So first jobs and things like that. So
yeah,
I think then they go back and say, "Okay, well, what agency did I work with?" Right? That's just wrong if you're not paying that money.
yeah,
Like if uh, workers don't know, they don't know what they don't know. So I think part of our job as business owners, as the industry, is to make sure that we're helping the worker
yeah.
not only find a job, keep the job and all that kind of good stuff, but the stuff they don't know they're entitled to,
And
educating them.
that's what we do too. So we have a toll-free number. So we encourage our staff and clients, employees, if they have trouble with a pay stub, if they have problems with a pay, if they don't understand why their pay was, for example, some stat holidays are based on a calculation in the province, and others, are a different calculation. So helping them understand why, what their pay was and what it was and what it's supposed to be and what they're entitled. We do that. We answer the phone. So the clients can deal with it if they prefer, but they can also bring us in at any time and we can explain a pay stub or explain a vacation pay, a stat holiday payout and what that meant, or overtime situation.
Yeah, because I mean, we could go on for ages to just because staffing is such a simple yet complex business,
Yes,
right?
very, yeah,
See, like it is basic, very, very basic. We're helping individuals secure jobs. We're helping companies secure good talent, right? So when you say it like that, you think that's pretty simple, but it's the execution,
yeah,
it's the laws, and it's the human aspect of it as well.
yeah,
So I love the fact that you have this hotline that candidates can literally just ring up and say, "Can you explain this to me?"
yeah,
Right? It's just another. Now, of course, they can go to the agency, as you said, right? But as a business owner, it's just another peace of mind. If
right,
somebody is not sure about how their payroll has been calculated,
yeah,
instead of me sitting there or one of my guys sitting there trying to figure it out, saying, "Okay, here's the number,"
yeah,
because you guys have got all the
yeah,
data there and things like that. So that's really, really important. I love
yeah.
that. So I I know we're running out of time and I want to wrap up. So what would you say to those individuals that are, as I was saying earlier, they've got a perm revenue stream, they have an opportunity to do contracting. Um, what would you say to those individuals and those individuals who are thinking of starting their own agency, but they're really not sure about, because in my coaching practice, all of that is not my area of expertise,
Right,
right?
right.
So, what would you say to those people? Is it as scary as people make it? Is it as scary as we kind of seem to think it is?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe it is. I like
Okay.
it can be. I think,
Can be the being
i-
the word.
yeah. I think if when you have your first payroll and suddenly, and hey, I've got 5 people out working, and then what was your payroll? $5,000. Ooh, and and next week it's $5,000, and next week it's $5,000, and the client still hasn't paid you yet. In fact, you're not even sure they have an invoice yet. And all those things. So it's really easy to I remember one of my former mentors said to me, he said, "Oh, you got a new client?" And I said, "Yeah, I've got two people working there." He goes, "Yeah, but they're already up to $20,000. See how?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I know." So he's like, he was more concerned with the invoice not being paid. I was more concerned about how many people are working there. And so that's how it happens. And so if you're not ready for those things, you want, as a like a NASCAR driver, you want to drive that car, you want to drive it fast, and you want to beat the other drivers, because it's a race for good candidates. But when you pull into the pit stop, you don't want to jump out, change the tires, check the oil, do all those things, because you want people to do that, and you want to be able to get onto the race and keep going. But if you do that, and if you can say, I'm going to hire part-time person and going to do all these things to have people ready to do that business. If you do that, if you don't tie your revenue to your costs, that's where you can get into trouble. That's where the government taxes can overtake you, because if your revenue is tied, if what we do is tied to their revenue. So if the costs are going up and down like this based on their revenue, that's a good way of building a profitable business, because your costs are always tied to your revenue. So that's what I would recommend, is look at that for that sake. And then when you're highly profitable, then you can look at hiring people, or if you see it's fit.
Yeah, you're right, because when I originally set up on my own back home in England and doing the temporary, I always factored, right? So for me, it's just like, yes, I'm paying a little bit extra,
Yeah.
but it's like, okay, I know payroll is done. And
Yeah.
that's just the cycle, right? Money
Yeah.
goes out, money comes in, it goes out, and all the rest of it. And
Yeah.
hopefully there's more left at the end of it.
That's right.
But it's that peace of mind, right? Which kept allowing me to scale my business, because I didn't have okay, well, I remortgaged my house, or I took a line of credit out, or, and there's that seed. Now, don't get me wrong. I know there's, you can't just be funding everything without having checks and balances in place, but it allowed my business to grow. I certainly felt far more easier. It
Yeah.
allowed me to do what I enjoyed the most, which was the client piece, the BD piece, and just going and making things happen without having to worry about,
Right.
oh, now I've got to sit down and do payroll.
Exactly. And you can spend Monday and Tuesday now, and half of Wednesday. Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, on Friday, you're going to get all those calls that we can handle for you.
Yeah.
What happened with this check? Oh, I thought I was going to get this much. And all those legitimate or questions that are going to come up with everything. So yeah.
Well, one of the things, before we wrap up, I've just remembered, we talk to in our business, we talk to a lot of staffing specialists who are working with companies where it's not they don't have a partner such as yourself, and so they're dealing with these payrolls on Friday, the
Right.
issues with payrolls wrong and stuff like that. It is really, really stressful.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
is really, really stressful for
Yeah.
them. So not only is it stopping them from filling an order, for example, and things like that, whilst they're dealing with this. But one of the things we hear a lot of is just the stress and pressure it
Yeah.
puts on these individuals.
Yeah.
And we come back to that mental health, which is mental well-being of your teams, which is a whole topic in itself.
Right. Exactly. I mean, on Friday when somebody calls and they say, my check should have been 700 and it was 300. Like, and then you check and you go, "Oh, you know what? There was a mistake. We didn't see that second time sheet. Oh my gosh." So what do? That person that person wants their pay. They got to pay their rent or whatever they have to pay. They need their money. Now are they going to go back to your job on Monday?
Yeah.
Knowing that, the pay is wrong. All of those things. It's how you handle it. I mean, you have to take that. Some agencies are very nasty on those
Yeah.
elements. I mean, they can't afford to anymore. I don't know any who still do, but over the years, I've seen so many nasty tricks on Friday that just make me cringe. But those, like you said, that's the pressure. So all of a sudden now you've got somebody that, oh gosh, he's not gonna make his groceries or make his rent, and I feel terrible, and it was our fault or the client's fault or something. What do we do? We can solve that problem. You want to solve that problem, and you want to solve it as quickly as possible, and get them paid, or at least empathize and make them feel that something's being sorted out, or there was a mistake, but the client has to approve it or something. All those things you want to make sure that that stress is taken off, and that's a stress. Trust me,
Oh
it's a
yeah.
stress. Yeah.
Oh, it totally is, right? Because ultimately, especially if you've got somebody that's out on a long-term assignment for you, or somebody that is literally, no, I was going to pay for this afternoon, so I need the money, and it's
Yep.
their money, and they've earned it. So,
Yep.
right, and the thing is, mistakes happen. We all make
Yep.
mistakes,
Yep.
right? It's what we do about it.
Yep.
It's how we handle it,
Yep.
right? So, okay, we're really are running out of time, so
Yeah.
want to wrap this up. Thank you ever so much
Thank you.
for taking the time out today.
It's
Really
awesome.
appreciate it. Now, if people want to get hold of you, want to talk more, what's the best way for them to get hold of you?
Well, they can email me at michaelc@wagescorp.com, or they can go to wagescorp.com, and there's all kinds of contact me there. And yeah, that's we have a toll free
Fantastic.
number on the site as well, and so on.
Perfect. So thank you for that. So, guys, thank you for tuning in. And again, thanks to Apex for letting me use their offices this week. Really appreciate it. And I will be back next week with another guest. Mike, thanks ever so much for your time today.
Thank you, Suki. Take care
Take
now.
care.